Hey, it's Jamie, and welcome to a selects edition of Eventual Millionaire. This is where we go back and find the best of the best, the ones that you loved from the past 6-7 years. We've been doing this a long time, and there's some amazing interviews with amazing guests that you have not seen yet. So we are bringing them back. It is the selects edition. Let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to the Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jamie Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jamie Masters, and today on the show we have Radha Agrawal. You can check her out at daybreaker.com. She has started a huge movement. She's a community force. That's what her bio says, but everything I found online just feels like a force. Her new book, or her book that came out actually in 2018, way before the pandemic, is called Belong. She was ahead of the curve of all of this community-driven neediness that we have right now. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, it's crazy how much the pandemic sort of brought out how lonely we already were before we even realized it. And so it's just amazing that you've been creating communities for such a long time. Give us some help because we know we need it.
Oh my goodness. Where to begin? I mean, I think, 1 in 4 Americans have 0 friends to confide in. And this number has tripled in the last 30 years, and it's only gotten worse during the pandemic. And so to really, again, remind ourselves not just why belonging is important, but how to belong, I think is sort of why I wrote the book, right? I think all of us know that belonging is so important and such a sort of foundation of our happiness and a foundation to our development and health and wealth. But most of us don't really know how to belong. So one of the things, when I think about, building community is first just asking yourself sort of like, what are my core values? Like, who am I? I think so often in our journey to building, community and making friends, we so often forget our own personal core values and where we are in that moment. So I think the first thing I think about when, I built Daybreaker, when I, built my own personal community, was what do I care about? What do I want? What do I value? What are the qualities I'm looking for in a friend? So the first thing I did at 30 years old, when I looked myself in the mirror, this is 12 years ago now, and I realized I didn't belong. I was sleepwalking through my 20s. I was really kind of realizing that I had never written down on a piece of paper the qualities I was looking for in a friend, right? We seem to kind of stumble into friend groups and sort of fall into these friendships that, we don't necessarily choose or are intentional about. They just sort of happen to us because they sit next to us at our office, or their lockers are next to ours. So we're very unintentional about our friendships, yet we're so intentional about our professional careers. We're so intentional about our romantic partnerships. And yet our friendships are kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't really care. And yet that's the backbone of our happiness. So the first thing I did at 30 years old was I sat down, and sort of the beginning of my book, it's sort of, I wrote down 3 columns. Column 1 was, what are the qualities I'm looking for in a friend? And really took the time to write that down. I wanted friends to talk about ideas and not each other. I wanted friends who were adventurous and curious, who weren't just complainers. I wanted friends who weren't just addicted to social media, but were actually doers, right? So I wrote down all those qualities. And then column 2 was, what are the qualities I don't want in a friend? Like, I didn't want negative Nellies. I didn't want shoulder shruggers. I didn't want shit talkers. I didn't want sort of people that really brought me down, jealous people, envious people. So I wrote down all those qualities I didn't want in a friend. And then column number 3, perhaps the most important column, was, what are the qualities that I need to embody as a human being to attract the friends that I want? And so I need to be less of a canceller, because I got too busy. I need to be less judgmental over the qualities in friends. And so I kind of did this audit, and that was the beginning of my community journey. So encouraging everyone listening to do the same for yourself, because it is truly eye-opening.
This is exactly what me and my friends are talking about lately, just because you realize the level of depth of friendships that you have. And there are no real good books on it besides yours that I've read. There's How to Win Friends and Influence People that they recommend from many, many years ago, that we're in a different society now than we were back then. There's no real good ways of teaching you how to become friends with someone, like, anywhere. It was kind of weird.
Right. It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah,
and so much of the resources that exist, so much of the resources that exist are, either, 80 years old. And even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is amazing. I love it. It was written in 1943, and so much has been discovered. Technology has been invented. There's so much that has changed, and he invented his hierarchy of needs. So even, I rewrote his hierarchy of needs, and updated it in my book as well, to really show that belonging is actually not in the second or third rung of the hierarchy of needs, but in fact, it's a foundation. It's the base of the pyramid. It's the base of our needs as a human being.
Yeah, with all this isolation, not only for talking to other people, but for myself, it was so lonely. And I didn't realize how that affected my mood so much. And so let's talk about personal friendships first, and then we'll move into the business movement stuff, because I know people want to hear about that too. But how do you start cultivating that group? Like, I've run mastermind groups and I've got sort of a core group of business friends that I absolutely adore. But on the personal side, it's different. It's like, let's just hang out. And like, how did you determine to build the level of depth of connections? Because I can make acquaintance friends easy, but it's the level of depth and commitment to each other that I'm really looking for.
Totally. So step one, again, is, this is also another exercise in my book as well. But essentially, I kind of drew out 3 sort of circles. Imagine a Venn diagram. And in this first circle, I wrote out my personal values, right? The second column was I call it your VIA chart, your values, your interests, and your abilities. So what do you value today as a human being, Jamie, right? Like, what are you interested in exploring as a human being? And what are you actually good at? What are your abilities as it relates to your sort of, skills that you can bring into your community? So, so an example of an ability is, I am really good at cooking, or I am really good at gathering people at my home, or I'm really good at bringing instruments to a gathering so people can play music together, or, I'm really good at asking questions. So I think just like first sitting down and mapping what are your gifts, right, that are innate to you, that don't feel like work. Just sort of really thinking about how is it that you want to show up for your community members? What are the things that you feel so already inclined to do as a human being that we don't often think about sort of through the lens of making friends? So step one is like, what am I good at? What do I value? And what am I interested in exploring? So once you have that map for yourself, then I developed what I call the 4 phases of community. And it's also, again, in my book. But the outer core of the sort of, imagine a bullseye, right? So 4 circles, concentric circles with a bullseye at the center. The outer circle is what I call your exploratory phase of community building. So this is where you start plotting out on the exploratory, ring in the far outside of the circle, all the things that you're interested in exploring that you wrote down in this concentric circle, this Venn diagram. So what am I interested in exploring? Let me write that down in this exploratory phase. So then you find those. I'm interested in exploring entrepreneurial communities. I'm interested in exploring, kind of festival communities, musical communities, like adventure travel communities, whatever it is, right? Parenting communities. So you begin plotting those kind of communities that you want to explore on this outside ring. And then you go out and kind of get curious, and you go on meetup groups, you go on Facebook, you ask friends in the area, you ask acquaintances, do you know anybody that are connected to these groups? And then from there, you start sort of like, no strings attached, no pressure. You just start showing up to some of the community events. You start showing up to these things that people are putting on. And then from there, from exploring these communities, you begin identifying, okay, these 3 I'm interested in actually going deeper in. So now you move in 1 rung into what I call the participatory phase of community building, which is like, now you're like, okay, let me go and volunteer. Let me roll my sleeves up. Let me get really involved. Let me ask how I can support this community, and start showing up and really participating, not just kind of as a voyeur, but really showing up as a participatory volunteer community member. And in that experience of participating, you'll find what I call a portal. So portal is a generous person that will then kind of invite you to a dinner party. A portal is a human with whom you're like, oh my God, you rock, you align with my values. This exchange that we're having feels so effortless and easy and energizing. I love you. And then she's like, oh my God, I love you too. I'm actually hosting a dinner party at my house next week with like 10 people. Would you want to come? So from that exploration, from that participation, you find that portal who will then invite you to a soft landing with an amazing community of like-minded, values-aligned people. So that's sort of like a very basic overview, but that gives you a much easier, less scary, where do I start map, and a lot of this is sort of obviously more deeply shared in my book.
Well, and that's the thing, because communities already exist in places and tapping into those, but it does feel like it's like a siphon, because you're like, ooh, I like this piece, or I like this group of people, and I don't necessarily want to join that community constantly. So I love the idea of portals. I want to be a portal. I want to have dinner parties all the time now. Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, can I do that? Do I host that and create my own?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm a portal, and I love hosting, but that's also because I love creating a home. I love decorating. I love hosting. My husband loves to cook. So we both we just love to create experience already naturally. I mean, of course, that's where Daybreaker came from, is this sort of deep desire to host and gather community members, because we were doing it in our own homes already. But yeah, if you want to gather, just start kind of, this is, I have a kind of introductory community building practice in my book as well. I call it the community building starter kit. And basically what you can do, Jamie, like literally as soon as you get off the phone, is you can say, okay, great. What type of kind of portal do I want to be? Okay, I want to start doing these. I want to start hosting dinners around new ideas or big ideas or inventive innovation or whatever. And so you give the group a name. You give this dinner series or this gathering series a name. Like Daybreaker, we gave it a name, right? You break the day. We throw dance parties at sunrise at 6 a.m. and we gave it a name. And then we said, okay, great. We're going to throw these parties that are sober and with this type of amazing music, with this amazing food, no alcohol, and we're going to do it on these wonderful mornings. So you would give your community a name. So you'll call it, the Innovation Masters or whatever. And then, dinner series. And then you give it a name. Then you give it a cadence. And you say, okay, I want to commit to doing one of these every 3 months. Because once you build, or one every month or every 3 weeks, or you give a cadence. So give a name, then commit to a cadence, right? And then commit to a little budget, right? And that's all you need to do. And so you say, and then from there, then you start putting it out to your friends, to your Facebook groups, to different circles, to your community, to different friends that you meet. You're like, hey, I'm hosting a dinner. I have 10 spots at my table. I would love to invite you to this name of this community dinner. And I want you to come prepared with, to answer this question. I want you to come, and this is the theme of the dinner. So we're inviting everyone to kind of bring a themed appetizer or whatever, so people can participate and feel connected to the community. And then when you come there, it's not just a wine and cheese and it's, a boring kind of event. You're really thinking about, how do I actually create meaningful questions? Not what do you do? But in my book, I have like 5 or 10 questions that you can ask. Like, what are you most excited about? Who in your life has inspired the deepest sense of gratitude? Whatever. There's so many different questions you can ask that can go deep right away. But as soon as you throw that first event, you're really going deep right from the beginning. And there's all these tactics around these dinner experiences, but that will make you a portal. And then everyone there, you then at the end of the dinner, you generously send an email or a text that connects everybody, so that you're now like you're not sort of trying to hoard those contacts and relationships that some people can do and feel envious or jealous of friendships that are formed that you help to facilitate because they want to be part of it. So you have to let go of that and just be generously open to, maybe they're going to be best friends that you might have made that, and they're going to now thank you for it. So I just think that there's so many things in this world of community building that are so connected to our own past things. I don't want to share my friendships and relationships. I don't want to generously connect people. I want to keep those connections for myself. And I think all of that has built this kind of loneliness epidemic in our country. So we can really stop that together.
Yeah. I just appreciate the practical aspects too, because it's not rocket science, but like I've hosted a lot of things before, but I've never set a cadence. I've never kept up with it. Like it's always been something else and it's like random and it doesn't, but you're right. Like that's probably why I haven't gotten an actual sense of community, because it's random over here and I do personal one-on-one intros, but everything seems very disjointed. And so having a series and sort of pulling it all together, this sounds super fun. I love, and
Right.
this is literally what I've been asking for. So I'm so grateful I'm interviewing you right now, because this is the exact same thing of trying to get the same type of people that have the same values anyway to be able to be in community together. How do you bring that to a business, right? So it's one thing to have intimate, close connections, but you've created some massive things. So how do you do that on a business scale?
I mean, I think the same principles apply, right? I think it's like step one is to really not think of your customer base as users, right? And I think that's sort of like a gross, in some ways, term for, it's like you're using them to come on. It just feels very transactional from the get-go. So we always think of building a marketing plan through the lens of community members, and how can we actually build a real loyal following, a real loyal community? And it's by doing and partnering and creating events and community gatherings and sort of services for your community members that really doesn't make it feel like a transactional thing. So for us with Daybreaker, for example, yes, our foundation is a community, but we committed to doing a monthly cadence. So when we launch a new city, for example, Daybreaker's in 30 cities around the world now. When we commit to doing a new city launch, we are committing to do at least 4 events there every single year. So every quarter we do an event there. Next year, we just committed to doing 4 10-city tours, right, across the nation. So each tour will be, connected to different sort of kind of taglines that we've set for each of the tours. And so by setting these 4 10-city tours, we're already kind of building this community. We're already giving sponsors a way to kind of join each of these tours because we've committed to set number of dates, set number of times. And then we're also now committing to a certain number of ticket sales because we now can predict, okay, if we're doing 40 events next year, we're going to have anywhere from 500 to 2,000 community members at each event. We can predict that we're going to sell X number of tickets, this number of revenue. So, that's our business for 2022, right? And so, if you're selling, for example, when I started Thinx, my underwear company, we think of the same thing. It's like, we're not just selling underwear, but let's build a community of feminists, right? Because Thinx is really about managing your periods. Yes, we're selling underwear as a product, but how do we actually build an army of feminists who really care about women's empowerment and giving women the ability to not leak through their underwear so they can stay in their jobs, they can stay in these creative conversations. They don't have to run out to the bathroom. They can stay in 15-hour surgeries if they're a doctor or whatever, right? And so we really talk about our underwear through the lens of women's empowerment. We think about things through the lens of building a community of women who are for the 21st century and beyond. And so through that lens, we built this incredible community of Thinx ambassadors and Thinx community members who really felt like a proud badge, a pride to kind of be a Thinx ambassador. And so it's a deeply vital part of every business. And most business owners think of community through the lens of a nice to have, or like, let me throw a recent college graduate on to do social media or to do community management and just like pay them hourly or pay them part-time, or it's just sort of an afterthought. But if you really want to scale a 9-figure business, which is what I did with Thinx, with my sister and with Daybreaker, we're well on our way to that. It's really to build a chief community officer, a CCO role as a top executive position at your company, because they should be talking to the marketing department. They should be talking to the sales department. And the community really, the chief community architect, the chief community officer, is the one who dictates what the community needs, what the community is asking for. The chief community architect is reading the room of the members, or they're really understanding what the needs of the members are. And yet most organizations are looking at sort of revenue through the lens of conversion rates and marketing funnels rather than loyal community members. And in the end, if you actually do the math and you look at the longitudinal studies around community architecture and marketing spend, if you spend time building your community in the long term, your community is going to return a much, much larger investment than the marketing dollars spent, because you have to continue spending marketing dollars every single month, rather than a community. Daybreaker, we spent $0 on marketing in the last 8 years. I mean, literally like a negligible amount of money in marketing. We grew to a multi-7-figure business many times over, just by what we call whisper sharing, by building a loyal community of deep brand ambassadors and community enthusiasts, a Daybreaker enthusiast who really care about us. And then since then, because we built a community, we now just launched Daybreaker Plus, the first platform built for joy. So when people can actually practice joy on our platform. And in doing so, we're now able to convert our community members from ticket buyers to now recurring member revenue. Right now, they can actually join a community online. They are feeling a sense of connection to our community. They want to go deeper with us. We're now offering a deeper membership opportunity for them to go deeper with us through this member portal, digitally, through much more high touch connection with us at HQ. And so with a loyal community, we can invite them to so many different offerings, and all of a sudden you're in the products and services game. So it's a really important, vital part of the business.
Okay, I have like 1,000 questions from that, because I see CEOs sort of separating themselves completely from the customer client, right? It sort of starts going, oh, we randomly survey, or we ask them questions once in a while, instead of, like you're saying, a completely different mindset shift. They will tell you what they need and want. It's actually much easier probably in the long run. And like you said, a lot less expensive in the long run.
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about like how you would launch per city. What are these whisper? Because they're going, ooh, that sounds amazing. I would totally love to care more about the human and create community than deal with Facebook ads constantly.
Right.
And
also, the algorithm has changed.
No kidding.
The
Everybody's
algorithm
frustrated.
has completely changed. Everyone's freaking out.
Yes.
So now, in our world of experience, we're getting 1 million phone calls from brands who want to partner with us because they're like, Facebook's no longer working. We need to diversify our marketing spend. Let's now go back to events, and let's now go back to IRL. So this has now become a really exciting space for brands to partner with people like us. And so what I would say to all the brand owners listening, or to CEOs, is find communities like us. It might be us. It might be obviously 1 million other different communities, depending on what your objectives are. But finding community organizations to align with is the least expensive way to launch your community, because community builders, community architects already know we already have spent the last decade doing what we know how to do best. So we actually will help bigger brands, bigger partners learn how to build community for themselves, and then they go off and do it on their own. So I think step one for any smart business owner, it's like find local community organizers, local community events. I mean, if they're national like us and we have local chapters, that's obviously, better, because you can hit the easy button. But otherwise, you can really just start with finding other organizations, community organizations in your city that align with your brand values, and then start aligning, start sponsoring, start showing up to their events, start participating in their events by being either a sponsor, a support, any type of media partner for them. And that's just a beautiful way to start building a bridge and start sort of building that grassroots community, because the community builders in there, we can all smell those who are kind of like fake. They're just marketers who want to buy their way in, rather than, hey, I'm here to support the community. I'm here to be a voice. I'm here to be a partner in this community. I want to be here long term, not just do a pop up and leave, right? And then it creates an environmental cost that goes along with it. So many of these marketers out there, they do giant pop up events, so much waste, so much unnecessary cost goes into having to pop up events for a launch of a new product or service, rather than starting with a grassroots organization and building by continuously showing up month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year with these local community partners. So I think it's so important for brands to begin aligning with local chapters and national chapters to be able to really start seeding themselves in the way that feels organic and authentic, rather than inauthentic, which everybody can smell and see anyway.
Yeah. So when you go to like the new cities, are you already in there in other ways before you even do an event? Like, how could you get 500 to 2,000 people to show up in a brand new city? Because it's one thing to have a base.
Totally. It's a great question. So step one is we always, we have, hundreds of cities that want us to launch in their city all around the world. And so what we have learned was that we need about 4,000 to 5,000 email signups from a local kind of community ambassadors who are like, I love Daybreaker. I want to bring Daybreaker to my city. So they will go around, or they'll build a community to go around and recruit 5,000 people to join an email list. And then from there, the 5,000 emails unlocks the city. And then we will then find 2 top community architects, producers, community leaders, culture and tastemakers in those cities. And then we will fly them to New York. They'll stay at my house for 3 days. We're very hands-on. And then I have written, now evolved over 8 years with my team, a 80-page playbook that we train our producers to learn. And they go back and we fly there for their first event. And then if they get 300 tickets purchased for that first event, we'll fly out there and we'll launch that first event with them. So we've learned this process, having made many mistakes along the way, to not launch a new city unless you have at least 4,000 to 5,000 email signups, and unless you found real culture and tastemakers in the city. And we now have a very specific playbook for how to source and find these culture and tastemakers, and like that. And then we go there and we quality control the first event. And then we do a whole postmortem after the first event, give them notes on how they can make improvements. And then we have an annual summit in New York, or upstate New York, where we invite all of our producers around the world to come, and we do a lot of, kind of learning and trends on experience design, trends on events, trends on community. So we do all of that kind of learning as a collective as well.
That sounds fun. I knew you were going to be strategic on it. You know what I mean? Like, I knew there was so many more pieces to it, an 80-page manual on it. I'm sure there's a ton of amazing information on that. How do you take that? Because that experience live is such an important piece. And when we're in with a bunch of other people that feel that way, the energy is just palpable. How do you take that and put it in an online portal to really feel connection when we're staring at a computer screen?
Yeah. So, when COVID happened and we had to shut down, we had to move to virtual, we had to shut down all 30 of our cities, and we had to really reinvent ourselves. It was either we go to Hawaii and take a vacation for 2 years, or we serve our community who were dropping like flies. We had many friends whose siblings commit suicide. We had many friends who fell into deep depression. We had many community members who reached out and said, we need Daybreaker to stay happy and to practice joy in these really trying times. And so, our team, to their credit, our team's credit, spent hundreds of hours back in the startup kind of pit, relearning, rewriting the playbook for how to tell an inclusive, beautiful, connected experience in the 2D environment, right? So we had to throw the playbook, like what works in the 3D environment is completely different than what works in the 2-dimensional environment. So as an experienced designer, we were like, okay, how can we create a connected, let's get our community members to decorate their background. Let's get our community members to hold up signs of where they live. Let's get them to hold photos of friends that they're missing or wishing they could hug, or let's create sort of different elements and moments of multimedia so that we can really create this inclusive environment. So we served over 200,000 people during COVID. We had Boys to Men on. We had, Gloria Estefan on. We had 25 Village people doing YMCA. We had these incredible artists come on during COVID to serve. We had 20,000 people joining our live streams at a time. It was a wild broadcast that and we ended up growing our community from 28 cities to 168 cities, or sorry, 1,200 countries, 168, I think some I can't remember the exact number, but it was 1,200 cities around the world. And it was really, really, really beautiful. And then from there, we launched Daybreaker Plus, our membership portal, so that we could actually support now all 1,200 cities, because once we relaunched Daybreaker IRL, we want to continue servicing those communities every day. So Daybreaker Plus is our on-demand portal. It's like our Peloton of joy. And people can actually practice joy through these gentle brain body practices. And it's like $29 a month. So it's like a price point that was so much more accessible. And they can access from anywhere around the world. So it's been really, really cool to be able to kind of start with the IRL events, then move to live stream during COVID, and then now launch a membership portal through Daybreaker Plus. And so, yeah, it's been a real beautiful journey over the last couple of years.
Yeah, back to startup mode. And again, that's what you're good at, right? I mean, you're good at, putting in the time and really figuring it out, thank goodness. But it was, I'm sure, a lot to try and navigate what that looked like. When it comes to the membership site portal, especially if it's on demand, do you have any tips for on demand? Because it's one thing to like do it live and hold up stuff and feel like you're a part of the gang, but like if it's on demand and they're watching something, it's still sort of a one-way ticket, quote unquote. Do you have any gamification or anything like that helps with trying to get more interaction?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, it's a great question, but yeah, so we're still, building out kind of like the experience design around that. But one of the things that we did was we kind of looked at what are all the kind of the levers of joy that exist that we can actually add onto the screen to make it more art forward and creative than just, shooting a yoga studio and a yoga teacher in a yoga studio, which it just feels like, kind of less thoughtful about the two-dimensional experience. So what we did was we shoot all of our content on a green screen, and we put our teachers against a nature background. And then we color coded them. So based on each neurochemical. We partnered with the Greater Good. So taking a quick step back, we partnered with the Greater Good Science Center and the UC Berkeley in San Francisco, and we developed the first ever joy quiz. So this joy quiz basically is a 40-question questionnaire that we partnered with Dr. Dacker Keltner and his team at the Greater Good Science Center, this #1 behavioral science lab on the science of joy and happiness. And we developed this 40-question questionnaire. And based on your answers of the questionnaire, we basically will spit out a recommendation of joy practices that's personalized to you based on your neurochemical needs. So we look at what we call your dose, your dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, your 4 happy neurochemicals. And we basically kind of reverse engineer what you're lacking. So if you're lacking kind of gratitude or sunlight or community connection or touch or love or, any type of sort of any human value, we'll say, you're low in oxytocin, you're low in touch and intimacy. Let's give you several joy practices connected to, love and intimacy and connection. So then those practices are breath work or visualization practices or dance practices or tapping practices or a joy lecture series on love and connection or different somatic practices that are brain body connected. And I think it's the personalization of each of our members, kind of like what they're prescribed for joy. And then the way we teach the classes is so specific to the neurochemical and the kind of the science of what you need. It really feels like a personalized prescription to your needs. And it's been, we have thousands of members on the platform now. We just onboarded 75 doctors to prescribe Daybreaker Plus to their patients. So we're now in the beginning of actually bringing joy practices to mental health practitioners, to doctors, to functional health and wellness practitioners who are now prescribing joy practices as an additional really important service for their patients. And so it's been so rewarding and so exciting to see this growth, and the real need, of health practitioners to offer a new way to service their patients. So
I mean, my face hurts from
there's
smiling through that whole thing. Cause like, I knew you were going to be cutting edge. Like I knew that you're really trying to do sort of that leading edge kind of thing, but I had no idea. Even just having the neurochemicals in the form, I've never even heard anybody doing that before either, which seems so simple, right? But being able to have a quiz, cause there's a million things that we could try, tapping or whatever. And you usually try it and be like, well, is this the right thing? But if you match it up for what they're actually missing, they save so much time and energy of testing a whole bunch of different things when you already have that science backed. That's awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to join now. Okay. So,
yeah.
so I know we have to start
You got
wrapping
14
up.
days. Yeah.
Oh, great. Perfect.
Days on us. Yeah.
I want
And all
my
your
kid to
listeners
take
too.
it. Yeah. I want him to take the quiz.
Please.
Well, that's the thing,
Absolutely.
right? With kids in their masks and not being able to like see humans, and it's just been insane. And so, yeah, we're looking for like new different ways in supplementation. And yeah, I'm super excited to get them into that because he's super into the neurochemical side of things too. So thank you. So I know we have to start wrapping up because you have to go, but what is one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
Start building community. Start really sort of prioritizing community and your ambassadors and your core community members as a priority and a must-have, and build in a chief community architect role in your executive team, or really orient your marketing and sales to community first. And again, yeah, it starts there.
Yeah, it'll help you and help the community. So thank you. All right. Where can we find more about you online and grab your book and all that?
Yeah, you can find me at love.radha, so LOVE.RADHA on Instagram, and then Daybreaker and Daybreaker Plus at daybreaker.com. And you can follow us at DYBRKR on Instagram as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And again, like I said, I'm offering all of your listeners a 14-day free trial to Daybreaker Plus as well.
Awesome. And we will definitely link that in the show notes. I hope your day is magical.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for listening and investing in yourself with your time. I so appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be forever grateful if you would be willing to leave a rating or review in whatever app you use for your podcast. I know that's what really bumps it up in the rankings. And I would so appreciate your time, especially if you've been a long-time listener. But of course, if you like this episode and you're brand new, thank you for being here too. Have an amazing, amazing day.